Shorten started the year with his doorstop on the GST, but his first question in the Parliament was on education.
At the last election, voters saw coalition signs at polling booths that read, and I quote, "Liberals will match Labor's school funding dollar for dollar." So when will the Prime Minister sign up to Labor's Your Child, Our Future plan, which will ensure that every Australian child gets the best quality education, no matter where they live?
So, Laura, how important is this issue? Not just to Labor, how important is this issue on education funding? And so much of it is predicated, I guess, on the fact that that Labor's $70 billion cuts have to be credible.
Yeah. Look, Labor's cuts do have to be credible, but if you go back to the 2014 budget, it was the education cuts more than anything else. You know, the prospect of, massively expensive university degrees and things which really galvanised people, what was happening to their kids. This is a really huge issue. Now, it's gone away for the time being for the government. There are questions about Labor's policy, sure, and they should be scrutinised, but Labor has not said what it's going to do about university funding. It hasn't said what it's going to do about schools funding, and this remains, I think, the issue that they're going to have to resolve in the federal budget, because while they can throw the... Yeah, they can throw. The government can throw the states onto their own devices up to a certain point, but they do acknowledge that they have to make a contribution to the schools and education and and health. And you can't just say, "Oh, well, the money's being spent inefficiently."
Well, it's not about money. It's not a question of money. It's a question of efficiencies. But
it's
there
about
are disadvantaged schools, and when they hear that,
absolutely.
They would say, "Well, it would help us."
Yes, exactly. And people want to know that schools are being properly funded.
That also struck me too. I was in the chamber when they asked the first question. That also struck me that Labor's obviously they're not silly, and Shorten and Co. And I think they know that the GST wasn't going to live much longer, and so they better start getting it back to their own strengths as much. Like the GST is good fun to play with while it's out there, but I think they realised Turnbull's never going to carry through with it, and they've got to start getting it onto their strengths, and that was with that that policy announcement on the first day of school about restoring the Gonski funding and so forth. And I think it's
But the $70 billion, though, Niki,
well, they still have to find a way to pay for it. I mean, they've said
but the Parliamentary Budget Office has said they've found a way. They've ticked off on it.
Well, they've suggested $47 billion from the increase in smoking taxes. Well, there are a lot of question marks about that, despite what the PBO has said. I mean, I find it, difficult to see how they can say 10 years from now there will be that much money from a tax when they can't really get it right 6 months ahead or even a year ahead. So I think come the time of the election, Labor will be up against it to convince people that the money will actually be there to fund it. So there'll be a credibility gap and a funding gap for Labor.
All right, now to what